Are you comfortable talking about your price with potential customers? Or do you get all nervous and think it's really not a very British thing to do, and you just think the whole idea of talking about price is just so uncomfortable? Because actually, I come across so many people that feel like that. But very often that is actually getting in the way of you bringing on board more customers, because your customers need to know your price and they can't make a decision without it. And one of the crucial things to bear in mind is that if you become very nervous, if you become fidgety, if you come across as uncertain when you start to talk about your price, a customer might interpret that as you not being that confident about the service you deliver or your ability to actually help them. And if they sense a lack of confidence in you in that moment, that could quite easily cost you a sale. So I want to help you with some tips this week that are going to help you feel much more comfortable and much more confident having those conversations about price. And you know, the crazy thing is that very often this comes down to one really simple thing, because people tell me they're uncomfortable talking about money, or they're uncomfortable talking about price, or the whole price conversation is just icky. But actually, when I dig into the details of that, what I find in the majority of cases is the lack of confidence actually is the mask, and what's really happening is a lack of clarity about price. It's the fact that people are not going into those conversations with real confidence and real certainty about the price that they're going to quote. So because they've got that uncertainty, that translates itself into discomfort and nervousness. So I have 3 tips for you this week about how to get really confident about your pricing. And the first one is to make sure that you always have a price list. It doesn't necessarily have to be a list that you're going to physically put under somebody's nose or actively show to them. It may be a list that only you are aware of, but it is a list that gives you that clarity. And probably just as important as clarity is simplicity. Keeping that price list as simple as possible. You don't need 8 million prices. You don't need 8 million different price levels for a particular product or service. Look for ways to keep the pricing as simple as possible. You can potentially have add-ons or different bits and pieces or different packages, but look to create a price list for yourself with as few prices on it as possible, so that it's very simple for you to have those conversations. As I say, you don't necessarily have to create something glossy that you're going to show or share, but what you've got is a real tool of information for you, so you always know what your prices are. Even if they're ballpark, price from or to, or starting from, you've got that starting point for that conversation then, and that's really, really key. Now, the second thing I would say is, whenever you are going into a conversation, a call, a meeting with a potential customer, always think about the price that you are going to quote before you start that meeting or conversation. Because what you don't want to do is try and work that out in your head halfway through the conversation, because that's the point where you will start to panic, start to feel nervous, feel uncomfortable, feel uncertain. So have a look through your wonderful new simple price list before you go into a meeting or onto a call, and have a really clear picture in your mind of, my expectations are, this is the kind of thing that they need, and this is the approximate price that I am going to talk to them about. But when you go in with that degree of certainty, not only does it help you guide the customer towards a recommendation for what they need, but it helps you to have a confident conversation about the price of that. And tip number 3 is to always talk about price in that meeting. It's really easy to basically take the cop out, take the easy option and kind of say, I'll come back to you about that. Let me put something together. I'll drop you an email with some figures. Right, okay, I'll go away and crunch some numbers, and all those things that essentially let you off the hook so you don't have to talk about price at that point in time. The problem with not talking about price is that everybody leaves that meeting really uncertain. The customer has no clue whether you are in their ballpark. You don't have a clue whether they can actually afford it. There is no understanding of whether their budget and your charges are even remotely connected. Whereas even if you talk to them about a ballpark figure or a starts from or an approximate figure, if you talk about that figure during the meeting, even if you can't pin it down there and then, if you can talk about an approximate figure, then you're both in a position to see that there is compatibility with what you're looking to charge and what they're looking to spend. And the thing is, if you don't have that conversation at that moment in time, you potentially both go off in different directions with completely different expectations. And then you're also trying to have a conversation about price, possibly through email or through sending them a proposal. And at that point, it's really impersonal. The connection is not very strong between you because things are just being done on email. It's very impersonal. It's very logic based. Whereas when you're talking to them, you've got the customer in a much more emotional state and you're much more connected to them. So establish there and then that their budget is at least approximately matching your pricing. And from there, you are good to go. So I hope that really helps you think about pricing and how to make it simple and much easier to talk about. My 3 tips are to make sure that you always have a price list and to keep that list as simple as you possibly can. To go into every meeting with a really clear figure in your mind of the price that you are going to quote, and to always have a conversation about price in that meeting so both of you know where you stand. I really hope that helps. If pricing is one of your big stumbling blocks in your business and you'd really love a bit more help with it, get in touch with me and I have lots of lovely ways that I can help you get clearer, stronger and more confident about your price.